In this WrestleTalk news, major CM Punk and WWE Heat, WWE preparing for shutdown, our review of NXT and more. Subscribe and enable notifications to always on for daily wrestling news videos. Otherwise you won't get any presents. I don't make the rules, but Father Christmas told me. If you don't subscribe, you're dead to Santa.
Support WrestleTalk!
I've been covering wrestling news 5 days a week for about 5 years now, and in that time I've fostered an unbeatable intuition, an ability to read between the lines of the headlines and find the real story. That's why you click on these videos. It's why you're definitely subscribed to WrestleTalk already. Please subscribe. My realization as we approach the end of 2021, I'm starting to think that CM Punk and WWE don't like each other. Forbes have published an article about WWE 2K22, which is coming March 2022, maybe in the same way Veer Mahan is coming to Raw. The release date has already been pushed back by 6 months after a 2K21 edition was scrapped altogether. This follows WWE 2K20 being one of the worst wrestling games ever released, with glitches that still flash up behind me in the mirror when I visit the bathroom at night. But as if bouncing back from epic failure wasn't enough, with 2K's long-running wrestling game co-developer Yuke's also cutting ties with them because of creative differences, WWE has been cutting relationships of their own, releasing over 80 different wrestlers this year alone. This will greatly affect the 2K game as half of the roster might have been let go by the time it comes out. Sports game contributor, i.e. not a staff writer, Brian Mazik, has written for Forbes, so take this with a pinch of salt as he's not someone with an established track record for wrestling, and while Forbes has brand trust, its online standards are nowhere near as exclusive as its print editions about what WWE's mass releases mean for the 2K game. According to him, if the talent was under contract with WWE when the game was announced and when the roster details were submitted, and part of the initially submitted roster list that was approved by WWE, then it is perfectly fine and legal to include them still in the game, even if they've since left the promotion. Mazik writes that means we can expect to see Adam Cole, Bray Wyatt, Johnny Gargano, Keith Lee, Jeff Hardy, Ruby Riott, Kyle O'Reilly, and some of the other top names who were released to be included in the roster as a way to get to at least 150 wrestlers in the game. That is, unless there is an extremely broken relationship between the talent and WWE, which means far worse than just a cryptic tweet here and there about how their main roster run wasn't as good as their NXT one. Extremely broken relationships, like with CM Punk. Citing him as a specific example, Mazik claims to have been told by someone with strong connections to the situation, which is presumably a 2K source rather than a WWE one, that Punk will almost never be in a WWE game because the powers that be hate him. But Punk isn't the only wrestler that will never be brought back in by Vince McMahon. Despite frequently boasting in interviews that WWE want to bring him back to the company, even telling friends in October that he'd make his return once his little legal situation is cleared up of him being accused of aggravated kidnapping and sexual assault of his ex-girlfriend, Sean Ross Sapp writes that Alberto Del Rio isn't just not welcome back in WWE, he's not welcome back anywhere. I've spoken with people from WWE, MLW, Impact, who say they either have no interest in bringing Del Rio in or would be shocked if it happens. AEW talent I've spoken to say they've never heard him mentioned as even possibly coming in. But it seems WWE have just recommitted to one existing star, Sami Zayn. It was speculated last week that with Kevin Owens re-signing with WWE for 3 more years, that the promotion was now trying to keep his best frenemy forever, Sami too. They pointed at his increased screen time over the last month on SmackDown, WWE's favourite recent tactic for convincing people to re-sign. Now Ringside News is reporting WWE writers have been given the green light to pitch long-term ideas for Zayn, a sign that Sami has agreed a similar deal to stay with the company as Owens. This isn't 100% a confirmation that Zayn has re-signed though. There was a similar report back in August about how the writers' room was told to pitch ideas for Adam Cole's main roster run. run. Some thought that meant Cole had decided to stay with WWE, when in actuality, it was WWE's way to impress Cole with all the great ideas they had for him, like cutting his hair and making him Keith Lee's manager. With WWE content to flood the market with big-name wrestler releases like Lee, Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt, it's interesting to see who they make a genuine effort to keep, especially because AEW have now confirmed their reported interest in KO. It was confirmed Owens re-signed with WWE last week, mostly because McMahon offered far more money than AEW was prepared to commit. While AEW couldn't officially deal with Owens because of contract tampering, it was reported feelers were being sent out. AEW President Tony Khan has now told CBS Sports he would have been interested in Kevin Owens. He's a great wrestler. You'd think that would make Owens openly team WWE in interviews, but true to moral form for the guy that refuses to work Saudi Arabia shows, he's given his honest thoughts on NXT 2.0. Today's NXT is very different than the NXT I was part of, to the point I believe it should have a totally different name. I don't think it's better or worse, but it's just too different. So when I'm watching NXT, I don't see the NXT I was part of. It's not the same thing. I don't really feel any attachment to NXT now. And he's not the only big WWE star that might feel isolated by NXT's new direction. Samoa Joe has been spotted for the first time since vacating the NXT Championship shortly after winning it at NXT TakeOver 36 in August, with developmental talent Alama Collins posting a photo of him and Joe in the WWE Performance Center, where Joe is presumably asking, "Where's Johnny? Where's Adam? What's a Von Wagner? Where's Kyle? Where's Carrion? Why's there so much colour around here? Where's Triple H?" Joe has already been released once this year by WWE, but Hunter brought him back in to lead his new direction for NXT. Now Joe finds himself out of step again, with an NXT direction that possibly has no place for him. With the constant threat of being suddenly let go from your contract looming over every single person in WWE, Dave Meltzer has been pushing for wrestlers to demand no-cut clauses in negotiations. That way WWE would have to honour their side of the deals they agree, and it would provide the security and peace of mind that contracts are meant to give. Unfortunately, according to Fightful Select, this is a no-go for WWE from the very top. Several people of influence within the company were open to that, but eventually talent was told it isn't negotiable or something WWE was willing to utilise in their deals at this point. Specifically, Fightful has learned that Vince McMahon had been adamantly against it. If only WWE could get their own no-cut clauses with the hottest free agent in COVID variants right now, Omicron. In a worse new gimmick than Karrion Kross wearing a gimp mask, COVID's new Omicron form is far more transmissible than previous versions. In an effort to contain escalating cases from overwhelming local medical facilities, many governments are reimposing restrictions on large gatherings that would include professional wrestling shows. To prepare for that possibility, Wrestling Observer Radio has reported WWE and AEW might have to return to Florida, where both promotions don't expect mandates to be issued. But if they are, WWE can return to the Thunderdome, while AEW would run Daly's Place in Jacksonville. Ringside News have added, there are a lot of contingency plans that are being discussed inside WWE, and they are prepared for all scenarios playing out. Returning to non-touring or even worse, no fan shows would suck hard, robbing both companies big plans to kick off 2022. AEW have a big run of shows with free agent debuts expected tonight, while WWE have Brock vs. Roman at day one, the Royal Rumble, don't make us have another Rumble without fans, and of course, the biggest of all, the split of AJ Styles and Omos. According to WrestleVote, the AJ and Omos storyline was originally meant to run a lot longer, but WWE pulled the trigger early, tweeting, "It felt like they sped up the Omos and AJ Styles split. It's because they did." Source says both superstars have significant plans in early 2022 and wanted any type of blow-off program done prior to the major Rumble and Mania events. Oh god, Omos is winning the Rumble. At least AJ is in store for something big. He's going back to developmental. The NXT community. Styles showed up on last night's episode, which Tempest is reviewing right now, in about 5 minutes.
Well, we had a good run, Dexter. Sorry to see that you suck again. What's going on, WrestleTalk friends and fans? Tempest is back with another review of NXT 2.0 for the last time in 2021. In about 5 minutes. So this week's show opened with a promo from Tommaso Ciampa as he called out Braun Breaker. Ciampa went on and on about Breaker's lack of experience and how that cost him at Halloween Havoc and how it will cost him again at New Year's Evil. He didn't let Breaker speak, but told him that he wasn't ready for this. He wasn't ready for all of this. The lights, the championship, everything. He wasn't ready for it, and he's not ready to go and take that belt home to his family so they can all bark like dogs, and because they're Steiners, you see. Ciampa eventually slapped Breaker, which really set him off, and Breaker told him that at New Year's Evil he was going to beat him for the NXT championship. This was a really good promo segment. I thought both guys came out of this looking better than they went in, and it actually made me look forward to their match at New Year's Evil a little bit more than I would have otherwise. This gets a 5 out of 5 and a very good way to open the show. We then got the street fight between Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez, which actually started backstage as they just brawled for 5 minutes, and this was basically the start of the match. It went to the ring, but the match really started backstage. Hey, you want to hear a new drinking game? Take a shot every time a WWE referee says, "Come on." You'll be dead. This was a pretty solid blow-off match. There were tons of big spots using weapons and such, with Raquel Gonzalez eventually able to hit her choke powerbomb on a trash can for the win, and then afterwards she cut a promo about wanting her next shot at Mandy Rose. From the opening promo through the finish of this match, I thought NXT was starting off on fire, and then, well, the rest of the show just kind of happened. Raquel Gonzalez and Cora Jade cut promos at each other, basically saying that the other needed to go to the back of the line for the NXT Women's Championship, before Mandy Rose appeared on the big screen and said that at New Year's Evil they will be having a triple threat match. I thought the street fight was really good, and this post-match promo kind of brought it down a peg. This gets a 4 out of 5. Remember when I said the rest of the show happened? Well, it started here, as the Grizzled Young Veterans took on the Creed brothers with jacket time at ringside. See, a big problem that I have with NXT right now is that the matches are not booked to be matches. The matches are backdrops for stupid comedy bull, and it happens in almost every match. The point of this match was not the work of the Creed brothers or the Grizzled Young Veterans. No, it was jacket time sitting on Japanese commentary at ringside, because they speak a different language. That's the joke. Haha. Eventually both teams tried to put the other through the Japanese announce table, and this broke down into a big DQ, and you had Jacket Time, Briggs and Jensen, Grizzled Young Veterans, and the Creed brothers all squaring off. There's gonna be some weird 4-way tag match in a few weeks, I don't know. NXT comedy segments aren't funny, and when they get in the way of wrestling, that starts to piss me off. This match was not very good. I'm giving it a 2 out of 5. But then we had the best match on the show. JK, it was the worst match on the show as Dexter Lumis took on Trick Williams. See, for a while, Dexter Lumis kind of got away from his stupid character and actually just had wrestling matches. But now, no, the whole match was based around Trick Williams being afraid of Dexter Lumis. It just sucks, guys. It sucks. It also doesn't help that Trick Williams is quite green, and many of the spots in this match were very poorly timed. This match was just a disaster. Roderick Strong and Carmelo Hayes brawled to the back. It was whatever. This match sucked. It was a 1 out of 5. We then had the face-to-face segment between Grayson Waller and AJ Styles. It really is wild to see just how much bigger of a star AJ Styles is than the rest of the people in NXT. You really benefit from not being on NXT. The two cut promos at each other, and Grayson Waller said that he would drop AJ Styles if he wanted to, and AJ told him to do it, and Grayson Waller backed down, so he's a I'm gonna have to wait and see to really judge how I feel about this promo, considering if AJ Styles doesn't come back to NXT anytime soon, then this promo felt like a little bit of a waste. But if he does come back for an eventual match with Grayson Waller, this promo set that match up nicely. Yeah, let it play out, whatever. The delivery was fine, but there was no moment in this promo that's gonna make me think about it in a few days' time. That being said, more AJ Styles on NXT, please. I don't really know what to give this segment, but it was fine. I'll give it a 3 out of 5. We had the latest vignette package of Riddle and MSK, and apparently everything that happened before this was a dream, and they woke up and then Riddle was still there. He got off a bus and they had hats and he magically made scooters appear. This sucks. When you lay out all the segments after the fact, this makes absolutely no sense. And honestly, at this point, MSK is too obnoxious to be considered endearing, and these segments just don't feel cute because of it. I don't know if I usually rate these backstage vignette segments, but this gets like a 0 out of 5. Can I give it -5 stars? I know that's someone else's thing. And then the next match we had was Von Wagner versus Idris Enofe. Like every match in the mid-card of this show had to involve some stupid comedy angle. In this case, it was Robert Stone scouting Von Wagner. Von Wagner, who lost to Idris Enofe in this match. You can't even push Von Wagner right. I don't know if there is a right way to push Von Wagner, but having him lose to Idris Enofe, beat him up after the match, and then walk past Robert Stone, well, Robert Stone's like, yeah, impressive, is not it. This was another match that really wasn't much of anything, and then Von Wagner lost, so I don't know what the point of him beating Kyle O'Reilly was. This gets a 2 out of 5. And then the next match was Elektra Lopez versus Io Shirai. And if you thought you were tuning into this match to see a wrestling match, no, sorry, you've got the wrong channel. No, instead this match was just the backdrop for the next segment in the Zion Quinn Elektra Lopez romance angle that I don't think anyone actually cares about. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but this certainly doesn't have like index levels of interest. Halfway through the match, Zion Quinn came down to ringside and held mistletoe over his head in front of Elektra Lopez before he was pulled off the apron by Santos Escobar, and Elektra Lopez was beaten by Io Shirai. And poor Io Shirai. First Zoe Stark and now this. I know people will say that WWE and NXT aren't wrestling shows, but come on. I mean, there's a wrestling ring right there. I would prefer to see wrestling matches on my wrestling show than whatever stupid gimmicky skits these are supposed to be. And then we got the main event as Tony D'Angelo took on Pete Dunne. This is a really weird rivalry that just kind of feels like it's come out of nowhere. This was definitely the most straightforward match on the show, with Pete Dunne eventually getting the win with the bitter end. And then after the match, Tony D'Angelo got his heat back and hit Pete Dunne's hand with a crowbar. I guess we're going again. This match was fine, it wasn't spectacular, but I'm really over the trend of the heel losing clean and then getting his heat back after the match and beating up the babyface. It doesn't really get anyone over now, does it? The main event was fine, it just wasn't terribly memorable. I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5, and as for the whole show, I'm torn between giving it a 2 out of 5 and a 3 out of 5, but I think I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5 because I really like that opening promo. At least no champions got pinned this week. And that just about wraps it up for me. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on this week's show, make sure you go over to WrestleTalk Podcast later on today, where myself and Chopper Pete will be breaking down the entire show in complete detail. Merry Christmas, y'all. Have a happy holidays, and if I don't see you before the New Year's, remember that LIW is fine, now and always.
WWE released 18 names this year, which is more than Impact's entire roster, bringing their combined total of releases across 2020 and 2021 to nearly 140, which is more than AEW's entire roster. I don't want to do this video, you probably don't want to watch it. Merry Christmas! I'm Luke, hailing from Parts Unknown, and this is every star released by WWE in 2021.